So today I'd like to speak to you about the Bhagavad in Bhagavad Gita. That is, I'm going to speak to you about the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. And before I start, I'd like to, place a few caveats here that the Bhagavad Gita is not a book for everybody. Unfortunately, everybody imagines that they not only are free to study Bhagavad Gita, but they are also free to comment on the Bhagavad Gita. But Bhagavad Gita is not meant for everybody. Essentially, it is a primer of Vaishnavism. It is a primary text, the seminal text of Vaishnava Bhakti. And even the Bhagavad Gita itself directly declares that there are people who are qualified to come to Krishna and those who are disqualified from coming to Krishna. So, in the 7th chapter, 14th verse, Krishna says, Na mam duskritino mudha prapadyante naradama maya partha jnana asrambhavam ashritaha. There are 4 types of people who are disqualified from coming to Krishna. One is the complete fool, mudha. He is the imbecile. He does not have sufficient intelligence to understand Bhagavad Gita or even understand what is going on in everyday life. The second, he says, is a person who is a duskritina, muda, prapadyante naradamaha. So the second is the lowest among mankind, a person who's engaged in all sinful activities, all kinds of degrading activities, causing harm to people, himself and people around him. Such a duskritina is also disqualified from learning or hearing or coming to Krishna. The third type of person who is disqualified from coming to Krishna is Maya Partha, one who thinks that because he has knowledge of the material world, he is supremely qualified and looks down upon spirituality and expects it to meet the same material standards that he goes by. So that person is also disqualified. It is, in fact, the sheer effrontery of people who consider themselves scientists, who declare that they know everything and they don't accept anything that cannot be known through the senses. Well, it's such idiocy on their part, because if you go into the depths of what really science can tell you, science cannot tell you anything more than 5% of the universe. 68% of the universe is consisting of dark energy, which is supposed to keep the universe expanding. And rest of about 27-28% of the universe is consisting of dark matter, which you cannot understand or see at all. And only 5% of the universe is the earth. And science applies itself to 5% of the universe and then claims to know everything about everything. I am a medical scientist myself, but in that sense, but I would merely like to state that what we know, and what most of it we don't know. So Maya Partha Jnana is one who believes that everything lies in matter and doesn't understand what lies in consciousness or spirit. And therefore, that person is also disqualified from coming to Krishna. The fourth type of person is Asuram Bhavam Ashritah. Asuram Bhavam Ashritah is a person who is atheistical, openly atheistical. And atheistical, we mean a person who denies the existence of God for whatever reason. And because he totally denies the existence of God, he is disqualified from coming to Krishna. So one who is mentally handicapped, who is a mudha, one who is a naradama, one who leads a degraded, degenerate lifestyle, a person who feels his intelligence is best applied to matter and is not willing to consider spirit, and lastly, one who is openly atheistical. These four are disqualified from hearing Bhagavad Gita and hearing about Krishna. And Krishna says there are four types of people who come to him. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana duskritino sukritino arjuna. There are four types of people who come to me. Artho jignasur artharti jnani cha bharat sabha. So people who come to Krishna, one, are those who come to Krishna because they are suffering. They may be suffering materially in the world, like Sudama did. They may be suffering mentally in the world, as most of us do. Those who are inquisitive are also qualified to study Bhagavad Gita and understand Krishna because they also come to Krishna out of inquisitiveness. Then those who desire wealth, because they desire wealth, they come to Krishna. Dhruv was one of them. And lastly, the one who is a jnani, a person who realizes that Krishna is the source of everything. That person is a jnani and he comes to read Bhagavad Gita and to study Krishna. What Krishna said. In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna again says, Idam na tapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachan na cha shushushave vacham. You should not teach this Bhagavad Gita or this message which I am giving you, Arjuna. This should not be given to those who are not austere. You should not teach this message to those who are not devoted. You should not teach this message to those who are envious of me. So, this message, Krishna says, is meant for those who are devotees of Krishna. That is essentially what the Bhagavad Gita is about. So, having said this, I will go on to describe what is said about Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Before we go on to study Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, we must know very clearly that Krishna, who is speaking the message of divinity in the Bhagavad Gita, is none other than God. And not only does he declare he is God, right starting from the 4th chapter and going right up till the end, but he is also declared as God by Arjuna, who sees his cosmic universal manifestation with the Divya Drishti or divine vision which is given to him. And also, Krishna himself has been declared as God, Arjuna says, by all the great sages of that age, that all the great spiritual teachers, all the great sages of that age have all declared that Krishna is God. Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum. Ahustvam Rishya Sarve, Deva Rishi Naradas Tatha, Asita Devala Vyasa, Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. So Krishna is declared as God by Arjuna, and he says that all the great spiritual personalities of this time have all come to the conclusion that this is God. And not only that, he says, you have yourself declared that you are God. In the Mahabharata, when Bhishma is lying on his bed of arrows and he is about to give up his body, at that time when he is asked about dharma, he gives a big discourse which is called the Bhishma Parva on dharma and how it should be conducted. And finally, when he is asked, who is God? Bhishma points at Krishna, stating that he is God. So, Krishna is God. But it's very important to understand that he is not one of the 33 crore gods who exist in this pantheon of gods of the subcontinent. In the subcontinent, there are more than 33 crore gods or devatas, and each of them is declared to be the supreme by their followers. Each of them is declared to be supreme by their followers. But Krishna makes it very clear in the Bhagavad Gita that he is the supreme. Many people, he says, worship other gods with their hearts distorted by material desires. Kamaistaiste ritagnyana prapadyante anya devataha. When your hearts are distorted by material desires, then you worship this devata or that devata, or you worship this. You go to this place of pilgrimage to get this desire fulfilled. You go to that place of pilgrimage and you perform this vrat and that vrat in order to get your material desires fulfilled. And there are different gods to fulfill different desires. If those of you are famous with Sitla Devi temple, it was meant that she had special powers to cure people from the disease of smallpox. I don't know if she has that power to relieve people of COVID. I have not heard anything so far. Near my house, there is a temple which is called Danta Devi. And Danta Devi temple is meant to worship Danta Devi if you want good teeth or you want to be relieved of toothache. This is, of course, before a whole lot of dentists started their practice in this area. So there are more than 33 crore devatas, and everyone declares, all their followers declare that their particular devata is the supreme. But Krishna is very clear. He says, Antavattu phalam tesham tadapyalpamedasam. People who worship these gods for the fulfillment of material desires are fools because they are of small intelligence, because Devan Devayajo Yanti Mad Bhakto Yanti Mam Api. Those who worship the gods, they go to the abode of the gods. Those who worship me, they come to me. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly declares, Yepi anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvita tepi mameva kaunteya yajante avidhi purvakam. Those who worship other gods are offering worship without proper understanding. Yepi anya devata bhakta. Those who are offering to various other gods. Yajante shraddhayanvita. Even if they are offering full of faith. That is actually meant for me. Tepi mameva kaunteya. Yajante avidhi purvakam. But it is offered without proper understanding and with the wrong method. Ahami sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mam abhijanati tatvena taschavanti te. He says, I am the supreme recipient of all worship and all sacrifice. Those who do not recognize this fall down from their spiritual position. So it is very clear. Krishna says, Yanti deva vrata devan pitran yanti pitrvrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajno api mam. Those who worship the gods, they go to the abode of the gods. Those who worship the spirits and the ghosts, they go to the abode of the ghosts and spirits. Those who worship me, they come to me. And having come to me, they do not return. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna points out that those who worship other gods, they go to the abode of the gods. And having exhausted their pious credits there, they come back again into this world. They are not relieved from the cycle of birth and death. Similarly, Krishna says, Ananyas chinta yanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yoga kshemam vahamiham. But he says, I, those who worship me, ananyas, undeviatedly, without any distraction. For such people, he says, I preserve what they have and I provide what they lack. And he's, as I pointed out in the last session that we conducted, that nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tata gacchati. That one who does good is never overcome by evil. And having worshipped Krishna, that credit is never destroyed or expended, but having enjoyed in the heavenly planets, one is reborn in a family that is both pious as well as wealthy, so that you can resume your spiritual activities where you stopped the last time. And that is how Krishna preserves what you have and provides what you lack. And he does that both spiritually as well as materially. So you don't have to worry. So also, Krishna declares that people who imagine that I am the unmanifest become manifest. Many people talk about Brahman and they believe that Krishna is simply a normal human being who, through becoming a yogi or a sage, has realized his platform being on the platform of Brahman. This is completely untrue. Krishna declares, Avyaktam yakte mapanam manyante mam abuddhayah param bhavam ajananto mam anutamam avyaktam. So Krishna is pointing out that people imagine that I am the formless who's taken this form. He's saying this is completely untrue. This is absolutely untrue. He is, in fact, Krishna points out later, and I'll come to that he is the source of Brahman. He also says, Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanum ashritam param bhavam ajananto mam bhut maheshwaram. That ignorant men, they deride me. They do not accept that I am God. And they imagine that in some way I am in a human form. Moga asha, moga karmano, moga jnana vichetasah. Rakshasim asurim chaiva. So what happens is that these people who deny the presence of Krishna as God, such people, Krishna declares, in actual fact, they are frustrated in all their hopes, they're frustrated in all their ambitions and desires, they are frustrated in their attempts to acquire spiritual knowledge and their efforts for attaining salvation or liberation. You will see many people who believe that there is no God, but that God is formless. So year after year, life after life, they keep on going to one guru after the other. By themselves, they reach nowhere. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And they are still following one guru. And when one guru dies, they go and take another guru, and so on and so forth. They are never able to stand spiritually on their own. They have not attained anything spiritually because they are unable to accept that Krishna is God. For one who accepts Krishna is God and who follows Krishna's instructions perfectly, very quickly you will become perfect. Very quickly you will achieve spiritual realization. But no, you will not become God. You will become a realized spiritual soul. Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Dva imau purushau loke ksharas aksharas evacha sharas sarvani bhutani kutastu aksharas uchyate. There are two types of individuals in the world, those who are mortal and those who are immortal. So those who are mortal are those who believe that they are this body, and such people are destined to birth and death. The others are immortal. They are free from the cycle of birth and death. They are Jivan Mukt. They are called as Kutasto, means they are like the anvil on which the blacksmith hammers molten metal, and they remain unaffected by what happens to them in this world. But he says, Uttama Purushatva Anya, that God is different from even the realized souls. Paramatmeti udaratah. Yo lokotrayam avishya bibhartya avyayam ishwarah. So God is Paramatma and he is different from the individual Atmas. Both the Atma who is realized and the Atma who is realized that he is the soul, and also the ordinary Jivatma who is still imagining that he is the body, mind and intelligence. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the 14th chapter, Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyasya cha dharmasya sukhasya aikantikasya cha. Krishna points out that I am the source, I am the origin, I am the rest and the foundation, the basis of Brahman. He is the source from which Brahman emanates. He is not Brahman. He is beyond Brahman. That's why he is spoken of as Param Brahma. That means he is beyond Brahman. He is the source. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. He is the origin from which Brahman originates. So please do not get confused by people teaching Bhagavad Gita who do not accept Krishna as God, who are not Vaishnavas, and who do not realize what the Bhagavad Gita is saying. And they intentionally distort, pervert, and obfuscate the verses in Sanskrit so that you cannot understand what Krishna is really saying. So, to make it very clear, once again, Krishna is Bhagavan. There is a verse in the Bhagavad which says that Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti parmatmeti Bhagavan iti shabdyate. That God is understood in three ascending levels of realization. The first level of realization is that of the Jnani, who realizes that everything is Brahman. The second level of realization is the realization of the Dhyan Yogi, who realizes the presence of Paramatma within his heart. And the third level of realization is the realization of the Bhakt, who realizes the presence of Bhagavan, who is the source of both Paramatma and Brahman. To give you an example, if you are seated in your room and sunshine enters the room in the early morning, you say, the sun has entered the room, but it's only the sunshine. That is Brahman. When you look in your dressing table mirror, you see the sun reflected there as a circular orb of light. You say, the sun is in the mirror. But of course, it's only the reflection of the sun. That, my friends, is Paramatma. And lastly, you open your window, put your head out and look at the sun in the sky. And you say, hey, that's the sun. And that sun is Bhagavan. So God is understood in three ascending levels of realization: Brahman, Paramatman, and Bhagavan. So Krishna is Bhagavan. And because he is Bhagavan, he comes onto this earth for specific purpose. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sarjana. He says very clearly that whenever there is a decline in religious principles, at that time, and a rise in irreligion, so many philosophies masquerading as a religion, at such times I manifest myself. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come to deliver saintly people, I come to destroy the miscreants, and I come to re-establish the principles of religion. But indeed, you might ask, why does God himself need to descend in order to do these three? Because, first of all, sadhunam, the sadhus, they are already delivered. They are kutasto. Whatever the world throws at them, they are willing to take it. They are already delivered. They're transcendently situated, mentally unaffected. Jitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahita sitoshana sukha dukheshu tatha manapmanayo. For one who has conquered his mind, for him God is already reached. For him heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, they're all the same. So the sadhu is already delivered. Then why does he need to destroy the miscreants? He's already created a perfect law of karma. And that perfect law of karma is for people who identify with Prakriti and want to stay within the world, which accounts for all the miscreants. And how this law operates, I will explain to you when we do why bad things happen to good people. And you will understand how the law of karma operates. So law of karma takes care of all miscreants. Why does God need to come to look after the miscreants? So the saints are already delivered. The miscreants are destroying themselves through karma, because you may think that you are breaking the laws of God, but actually you are breaking yourself against the laws of God. And lastly, to deliver the principles of religion. But from time to time, God empowers his devotees as prophets, and these prophets re-establish principles of religion. Why does Krishna need to come to do all these three? And that is given in the verse that follows these. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sarjana. So Krishna says, I appear so that people who can understand my divine appearance and activities in this world, they do not have to take birth again. So for the human mind to grasp a God who is inconceivable, to grasp a mind, grasp with their mind, God who is beyond the senses, a God who is achintya, inconceivable, and avyakta, who is beyond the senses. It's very, very difficult. Krishna himself is asked in the Bhagavad Gita by Arjuna, Tesham satatam yukta ye bhajatam tvam paryupasate ye chapya vaktam aksharam tesham ke yoga vittamah. Is it better to worship you? Krishna is the impersonal, formless, inconceivable. Or is it better to worship you in this form as Krishna? Which is better? Who is more intimately united with you? And Krishna answers and he says, those who worship me in this personal form of Lord Shri Krishna, they are most intimately united with me. This is very important because he goes on further to say, those who are attached to the impersonal, absolute, inconceivable, they attain a lot of sorrow on the path of spirituality. Klesho diktarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukham dehavad bhiravapyate. For those who worship God, because their minds are attached to the impersonal absolute, for them the path of spirituality is very, very difficult and sorrowful. Maye avesha manoye mam nityukta upasate shraddhaya parayopetas te me yuktatmo matah. So Krishna explains that those who worship me in my personal form, they are most intimately united with me. So therefore, Krishna comes to give us a personal form on which to focus and meditate. A message personally delivered in the Bhagavad Gita, which we can apply in our lives to transcend suffering and to attain his feet. And also, it saves us from the suffering and misery of trying to worship God without form. Those who worship God without form suffer a lot, experience a lot of suffering, because their mind is simply unable to grasp something that is inconceivable. And they keep on floundering life after life. Years after years, they keep on following one guru, then another guru, then a third guru. Let each guru pass away one by one and they follow the next guru. They are unable, completely unable to attain spiritual independence that is dependent on God. I explained to you last time, job of the guru is not to make you dependent on the guru. The job of the guru is to make you dependent on God. When you become dependent on God, then you have attained your guru's mission. It is not the guru's mission to make you dependent on him or her. The guru's mission is to make you dependent on God. But to make you dependent on a formless God is exquisitely difficult and painful and sorrowful, and is a path of a lot of suffering which unnecessarily too many people are engaged in. The path of the Bhagavad Gita is very, very clear, to worship Krishna in his form. Maya Vesha Manoyamam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Te Me Yuktatmo Matah. This path is meant for those who have that faith. For those who have no faith, this path they will not adhere to. Ashraddhadana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapya Mam Nivartante Mrityu Sansara Vartmani. For those who have no faith, they cannot continue on this path. They must fall back again into this eternal cycle of birth and death. Shraddhaval labate jnanam tat parat samyat indriyah jnana labdhva param shantim achiren adigacchati. For those who have faith, they quickly attain that divine knowledge. So faith is required. Acceptance of Krishna as the Supreme Lord is required. So please don't get confused. For this reason, I have taken this lecture specifically right at the beginning. So it's now, I think, time to take question answers. Does anyone have any question answers? Any questions?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Nagarkatti, and welcome everyone. So, Dr. Nagarkatti, we actually do have a couple of questions. But first of all, I was wondering, you mentioned that the Bhagavad Gita is not really for non-devotees of Krishna and people who don't have faith. So, can we, for someone who's just started reading the Gita, it can be anyone, can the Gita serve as a guide or a medium to develop faith in the long run? So can we, can someone who's a non-believer start reading the Gita and actually turn into a believer? So can the Gita be a medium to become a devotee of Krishna?
See, even if you don't have full faith, if you take it up with in principle accepting Krishna as the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, that in principle acceptance of Krishna as God will become the means for you to develop faith. If you take one step towards God, God will take a one step towards you. But what is the size of your step and what is the size of God's step? In Vaman Dev, he covered the lower and earthly planets with one step. With the second step, he covered the heavenly planets. So the whole universe was covered. There was no place for the third step until he placed his head below Vaman Dev's feet and said, please place your third step on my head. So if you accept Krishna as God in principle, Krishna will slowly enter your life. If you speak to Krishna, Krishna will speak to you. So even if you don't have faith, if you pray to Krishna, Krishna will speak to you from within your heart. And when Krishna speaks to you from within your heart, you will have faith.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Shantanu. The next question we have is, does the Bhagavad Gita say it is okay to be flawed? If yes, how do we live with our flaws and yet not become sinners?
See, the sinner concept is really a Christian concept. We do not consider ourselves to be part of Prakriti at all. So one who takes this path, the minute he accepts that he is the soul and that he is dedicated to worshipping Krishna, from that moment onwards, he is considered to be Dharmatma. Sadhu is considered to be Sarva Sadhu. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Api chedasi papebhyo sarvebhyo papakritamaha sarvam jnana plaveneva vijinam santirishyasi. So even if you are the greatest so-called sinner, on this boat of knowledge, transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over this ocean of suffering. Api chedasi papebhyo sarvebhyo papakritama. If you're the greatest sinner amongst all sinners. But he also says that even if you are behaved abominably, api ched sudracharo bhajate mam ananya bhakt. Sadhureva sa mantavya samyak vyavasito hi sah. Shipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantimni gacchati. Kaunteya pratijanahi name bhaktya pranashati. Even if you have behaved abominably before, when you take to this path, you remain on the platform of the soul and you worship Bhagwan, you are considered a sadhu and very quickly you will become a dharmatma.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question, you spoke about Krishna in this entire session. So one of the questions we've had, I think you partially answered that as well in the session, but I'll still ask you, sorry, why did Krishna play so many roles in his life, that of a cowherd, charioteer, flute player, etc., while the other gods remain elusive and godlike, so to say?
So Krishna says, I told you today that Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Veti Tatvatah Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mameti Swarjuna. So if you understand the divine nature of Krishna's appearance and his activities, you will automatically transcend this world of suffering and you will be situated on the spiritual platform and return home back to Godhead. So it's important to understand that Krishna is a Purna avatar. whereas all other incarnations of Vishnu are not Purna avatars. For example, Ram is a Maryada Purushottam, means he is restricted, he has Maryada, he has certain restrictions, certain boundaries. Therefore, he appears more like an ideal king rather than God. Krishna comes as a Purna avatar. As a Purna avatar, he manifests all the activities of God himself, whether it is lifting Giri Govardhan Parvat to shelter his devotees, whether it is marrying 16,008 wives in order to give the kidnapped women whose husbands refuse to take them back. See, Ram refused to take his wife back when people cast aspersions on her, and his own wife Sita had to leave and go into the forest. Whereas Krishna, he went and he destroyed the demon who had captured these 16,000 women, and because their husbands are not willing to take them back, the families are not willing to take them back, he expands himself into 16,000 forms and he marries all of them. So that's the difference between Maryada Purushottam and a Purna avatar. So similarly, he appears in different forms so that you can relate with him in different ways. If you're a mother, you can relate to a baby Krishna. If you're a young man, you can relate to Krishna as a friend. If you want, you can worship Krishna as divine and as God. So it all depends. If you are a woman and you want to have a divine relationship, romantic relationship with him, that also is open. So all these are various roles Krishna plays so that he can give you something to fix your mind on and that you can then attach yourself to him.
Right. Of course. And we don't have much time left. So if any of you have questions, please post them in the comment section and we'll try and take them. Another question we have is happiness and sorrow are the same and you should look at them with a similar perspective. So it's a question. Does it mean we should not show our pleasure on hearing the good news and displeasure at a bad one? If they're the same.
Is that a question?
Yeah, the question is, our happiness and sorrow are the same and we should look at them with a similar perspective.
Happiness and sorrow are emotions or reactions of emotion, reactive emotions that come when different situations in the world come about. Those which you desire and those which you don't. But ultimately, you have to realize one thing, and that is the principle on which all religion is based, that God controls everything. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is said, Tena vina tranamapi na chalati. Not a single blade of grass moves without God's consent. If a blade of grass moves on the left side, it is by God's consent. If it moves on the right side, it is by God's consent. So everything happens by God's consent. If you accept that simple article of faith, then you stop becoming reactive in the world. You stop becoming happy when something happens and you stop becoming miserable when something else happens. In Bhagavad Gita, it is spoken of as Ishtanishta Papatishu, one who remains the same regardless of whether desirable or undesirable things happen to that person. So your reactions are based upon your desires. When you're free of desires and you happen to see the world as everything happening according to God's desires, then automatically you achieve an equanimity of mind, a stability of emotional regulation. And while other people may react with joy and sorrow and may react differently to honor and dishonor, you are able to accept them with greater equanimity.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shantanu. We can take, I think, a couple of more questions. Does the Bhagavad Gita, no, this is the one. Is renunciation the only way to achieve God, or is it service to humanity?
It is service to humanity with a mind which is completely renounced, which means you have to serve humanity by doing your duty. Don't try to do somebody else's duty. That is not service to humanity. Keep your own wife happy. Don't try to keep your neighbor's wife happy. Is that clear?
Yes.
So do your own duty. That is your responsibility. That is your contribution to mankind. Charity begins at home. There's no point in doing. Somebody once told me that my wife has gone to do social work. I said, what is that social work? So they said, oh, she has gone to the creche to look after the Aya's child so that the Aya can look after our child. So you have to do your swadharma. You have to do your own duty. That is service to mankind.
Right.
Don't try to run out of your home and try to serve this and that. Do your own job first. And after your own job is done, your own work is done, your own responsibilities, your own profession, your own job is complete, then you can see what else you can do for others. But first comes doing your own responsibilities in your own job. But you have to be renounced. Not renounced in terms of wearing orange robes and shaven head, but you have to be renounced mentally. Asakta buddhir sarvatra jitatma vigata spriha naishkarmyam paramam siddhim sanyasin adi gacchati. Krishna redefines the meaning of sannyas. He says that one who moves around everywhere in the world, and he moves around everywhere in the world renounced mentally, not attached to anything, that person is truly renounced.
Right. Okay. So the last question that we will take is that Krishna is considered to be the supreme being. How does one live a life to attain the blessings of the Supreme Lord?
Well, the secret of it will come later in the Bhagavad Gita, which we are covering, but essentially it lies in doing your duty faultlessly with the maximum amount of effort, with the maximum amount of sincerity as a sacrificial offering to please God. So if you do your duty at your workplace, if you do your duty in your home, and you do it in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to please God, and you use everything in your life to remind yourself of God, to become conscious of God at all times, that will be the source of your salvation.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Nagarkatti. I think we are almost out of time. Thank you so much. It was a lovely session, and we look forward to having you again next Thursday, which is March 4th. And of course, as we keep repeating in each session that Dr. Nagarkatti will be taking all the questions offline as well. So even after the live ends, you can post your questions in the comment section, and I will, collate all of them and send to Dr. Nagarkatti. I think the last week's questions have already been answered. One we could not take in the live session. So yeah, that's it. And Dr. Nagarkatti, if you want to give a little preview, if you want to talk about the next session in a bit, maybe you can go ahead so that people know what they can look forward to.
So the next session, we are going to discuss the question of who am I? So we talked about who is God. Now the question is, who am I? Because when you realize who you are, then you will understand what is your duty in life. So what does the Bhagavad Gita say about who am I? I'm purposely not doing it chapter by chapter, verse by verse in the beginning, but in the beginning, I'm choosing to give you an overview, and then I will go chapter by chapter, verse by verse, because Bhagavad Gita knowledge of different subjects is spread out like pearls on a thread throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And if I stick to one chapter, then I will not be able to give you the knowledge, connected knowledge which lies in other chapters. So in Bhagavad Gita, session next time on who am I, I'm going to collect everything that has been said by Krishna about who the individual is and who you are. And that will be explained to you the next time.
Okay. Okay. Great, Dr. Shantanu. We're all looking forward to it. And that's it. We have time for today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dr. Nagarkatti. We look forward to the next session next Thursday, March 4th at the same time, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Shantanu. Bye-bye.